everybody, welcome back to my true crime channel. My name is the True Crime Channel. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button so you guys not fail up a new true crime video. My name is the True Crime Channel. Hi, welcome me all to the True Crime Channel. Then welcome back. I'm so sorry I've been of you guys past 2 weeks and a half over that long video on the serial killer named Larry Eiler. Oh, I forgot about his name. I forgot about his name. His unknown case, another serial killer, which I know I'm done a lot of serial killer cases as far as I think for next month of November or next week, it's gonna be a new case, not another serial killer. So like that. I don't know if I should do more serial killer cases. You guys think a lot of serial killer cases so far? I feel like from December, I believe like 2 to 3 Christmas related videos this summer since so much of the holidays coming up. Like we got Thanksgiving, which is in 2 weeks, so almost already a week, and then you got Christmas, excuse me, New Year's, all that stuff. For today's video, I'm going to do the case of Nestor Killer, the case called Dean Corll, also known as the Candyman. And I know I did the case last year. I kind of did the case again, but I missed some details. But I just didn't like how it will turn out. Plus, all I was in the bathroom. We don't still live in the same house downstairs, so now I got my own bedroom outside from my own room. So yeah, I was thinking maybe since I live in my room outside my room, maybe I should start filming videos the same as I did last year to get those videos start all again with today. But if I know that's too much, I don't want to do that, so let's not do that. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Please hit post notifications about when I'm going to do a true crime video. Let's get today's true crime case video started. Dean Corll was an American serial killer and terrorist who abducted, raped, and tortured and murdered a minimum at least 28 teenage boys and young men between 1970 and 1973 in Houston and Pasadena, Texas. Which all over the Houston area, which is kind of crazy to hear about that. It's aided by two teenage appliances named David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henry. Crimes which became known as the Houston Mass Murders came to light after Henry fatally shot Corll. Upon discovery, it was considered the worst example of absurd murder in U.S. history. Corll was also known as the Candyman and the Pied Piper because he and his family had previously owned and operated a candy factory in Houston Heights and had been known to give free candy to local children. Dean Arnold Corll was born on December 24th, 1939, as a Christmas Eve baby. Definitely people who are born on Christmas Eve, you guys are so, not early, so lucky because you guys celebrate Christmas Eve. You also have birthday, and you guys have a Christmas afterwards. You guys can have birthday gifts and Christmas gifts the day after Christmas Eve. You know, born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, he was the first child of Mary Emma Robson and Arnold Edwin Corll. Corll's father was strict with his children. Mary Ayers' mother was remarkably protective for the first son. Their marriage was marred by frequent quarreling and the couple divorced in 1946. 4 years after the birth of the youngest son, Stanley Wayne Corll, Mary subsequently sold their family home and relocated to a trailer home in Memphis, Tennessee, where Arnold had been drafted into the United States Air Force after the divorce to allow her sons to remain in contact with their father. Dean Corll was shy, serious child who rarely socialized with other children, but at the same time displayed a concern for the well-being of others. At the age of 7, he suffered an undiagnosed case of rheumatic fever, which was not recognized until doctors found Corll had a heart murmur in 1950. As a result of this diagnosis, Corll, why is it Corll? Is Corll. Corll was told to avoid PE classes in school. Corll's parents attempted reconciliation and remarried in 1950, subsequently moving to Pasadena, Texas, a suburb Houston area. However, the reconciliation was short-lived. In 1953, the couple got divorced again. Which I don't understand is the marriage can work out for the first time while y'all getting married for the second time. Especially I know things are not going to work out again. I don't understand that. At this point, same thing being together with somebody for years and your marriage and your relationship was not working out. Why would you still back together with that person when your relationship was toxic and y'all was arguing about something? It just doesn't make any sense. With his mother again retaining custody of their two sons, the divorce was granted in amicable grounds, and both boys maintained regular contact with their father. Following the second divorce, Corll's mother married a traveling clock salesman named Jake West. Their family moved to the small town of Vida, Texas, where Corll's half-sister Joyce Jan was born. Corll's mother and stepfather started a small family candy company, initially operating from a garage at their home. From the early days of the business, Corll worked day and night while still attending school. He and his younger brother were responsible for running the candy making machines and packing the product, which his stepfather sold on his sales route. This route often involved West traveling to Houston, where much of the product was sold. From 1954 to 1958, Corll attended Vida High School, where he was regarded as a well-behaved student who achieved satisfactory grades. As soon as had been the case in his childhood, Corll was also considered somewhat of a loner, although he is known to have occasionally dated girls in his teenage years. In high school, Corll's only major interest was the brass band in which he played trombone. Corll graduated from Vida High School in summer 1958. Shortly thereafter, he and his family moved into the northern outskirts of Houston so that the family candy business could be closer to the family where the majority of the product was sold. Corll's father opened a new shop which they named Pecan Prince in reference to the brand name of the family product. In 1960, at the request of his father, Corll moved to Indiana to live with his widowed grandmother. During this time, Corll formed a close relationship with a local girl. Although he rejected a subsequent marriage proposal she made to him in 1962. Corll lived in Indiana for almost 2 years, but returned to Houston in 1962 to help with his family cleaning business, which by this day had moved to Houston Heights. He later moved into a apartment on his own above the shop. Corll's mother divorced West in 1963 and opened a new candy business, which she named Corll Candy Company. Her oldest son was appointed vice president of the new family firm, with his younger brother Stanley being appointed secretary treasurer. The same year, one of the teenage male employees of Corll Candy Company complained to Corll's mother that her son had sexual advances towards him. In response, she fired the teenager, which I don't understand. So why would you fire a teenager who said that your son had been sexually assaulting him? Why would you fire him? Like that made me mad. Cause like, why would you fire somebody knowing your adult grown ass son just sexually assaulted a teenager, a freaking minor at your shop, at your cutting shop? You should be firing your son, not the teenager. He didn't do nothing wrong. I just said that your son sexually molested or touched him on purpose and very much inappropriate. But you had to fire him, but not fire your son, your grandson touching kids. Like who? Like what? Like I just don't understand that. Like that. Like that's weird. Like I would never do that. If somebody came to my job and said my employees or one of my family members said that they touched them, molested them, I'm firing their ass. I'm not gonna say, oh, I'm firing you. I'm not firing the victim. I'm firing the one who did this to you. It's just common sense. Corll was drafted into the United States Army on August 10, 1964, and assigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training. He was later assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia to train as a radio repairman before his permanent assignment to Fort Hood, Texas. According to the official military records, Corll's period of service in the Army was unblemished. Corll, however, reportedly hated military service. He applied for a harsher discharge on the grounds that he was needed in his family's businesses. The Army granted his request and he was given an honorable discharge on June 11, 1965 after 10 months of service. Reportedly, Corll divulged to some of his close acquaintances after his release from the Army that it was during his period of service that he had first realized that he was homosexual, aka he was gay. He had experienced his first homosexual encounters. Other acquaintances noticed subtle changes in Corll's mannerisms when it accompanied a teenage male after he had completed his service and returned to Houston, which led them to believe he may have been homosexual. Following his honorable and discharge from the Army, Corll returned to Houston Heights and resumed the position he had held as vice president of Corll Candy Company. Corll's former stepfather had retained an ownership of the family's former candy business, Pecan Prince, following his divorce from Corll's mother in 1963. Competition between the two firms were fierce. In his teenage years, Corll increased the number of hours he devoted to the candy business to satisfy an increasing public demand for his famous product. In 1965, Corll Candy Company relocated to 22nd Street, directly across the street from Helms Elementary School. Corll was known to give free candy to local children, in particular to teenage boys. As a result of this behavior, he earned himself the nicknames as the Candyman and the Pipe, eh, Piped Piper. The company employed a small workforce and has been seen to behave flirtatiously towards several teenage male employees. Corll is also known to have installed a pool table at the rear of the candy factory where employees and local youth will congregate. 67, Corll befriended a 12-year-old named David Owen Brooks, so a grad student and one of the many children to whom he gave free candy to. Brooks initially became one of the Corll's many youthful close companions, regularly socializing with Corll and various teenage boys who congregated at the rear of the candy factory. Also joined Corll in regular trips he took to South Texas beaches in the company of various youths, and later commented that Corll was the first adult male who did not mock his appearance. Whenever Brooks told Corll he needed cash, Corll gave him money, and the youth began to view Corll as a father figure. Upon Corll's urging, a sexual relationship gradually developed between the two, beginning in 1969. When Corll paid Brooks in cash with the gifts to allow him to perform fellatio on the youth. Brooks' parents were divorced, and his father lived in Houston, and his mother had relocated to Beaumont, the city 85 miles east of Houston. In 1970, when he was 15 years old, Brooks dropped out of Wild Trip High School and moved to Beaumont to live with his mother. Following the closure of the candy company, Corll took a job as an electrician at the Houston Lighting and Power Company, where he tested electrical relay systems. He worked in his employment until the day of his death. Between 1997 and 1973, Corll is known to have killed a minimum of 28 victims. All his victims were males aged 13 to 20, the majority of whom were in their teens. Most victims were abducted from Houston Heights, which was then a low-income neighborhood in northwest downtown Houston. In most of these abductions, he was assisted by one or both of his teenage accomplices, which is David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne. He abducted and murdered his victims. Corll often changed his addresses. During the years in which he abducted and murdered of his victims, Corll often changed his addresses. However, until he moved to Pasadena in spring 1973, he always lived in or close to Houston Heights. Corll killed his first known victim, an 18-year-old college freshman named Jeffrey Cornell, in September 25, 1970. Let me show again. Corll killed his first victim as 18-year-old college freshman named Jeffrey Conan on September 25, 1970. Conan vanished while hitchhiking with another student from the University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. He was dropped off alone at the corner of Westheimer Road and South Ross Road in the uptown Houston area. Corll likely offered Conan a lift to his home, which Conan eventually accepted. At the time of Conan's disappearance, Corll lived in an apartment on Brooktown Street, near the intersection of the Westheimer Road. Brooks led police to Conan's body on August 10, 1973. The body was buried at High Island Beach. Forensic scientists subsequently deduced that the youth had died of asphyxiation caused by manual strangulation and clogged gas that had been placed in his mouth. The body was found buried beneath a large boulder, covered in a layer of lime, wrapped in plastic, naked and bound hand and foot with nylon cord, suggesting he had been violated. About the time of Conan's murder, Brooks interrupted Corll in the act of sexually assaulting two teenage boys whom Corll had strapped to a four-poster bed. Corll promised Brooks a car in return for his silence. Brooks accepted the offer, and Corll later bought him a green Chevrolet Corvette. Corll later told Brooks that he had killed the two youths and offered him $200, the equivalent of approximately $1,437 as 2022, for any boy he could lure to Corll's apartment. On December 13, 1970, Brooks lured two 14-year-old Spring Range youths named James Glass and Danny Yates away from religious rally held in Houston Heights to Corll's retirement apartment. Glass was an acquaintance of Brooks, who, at Brooks' behest, had previously visited Corll's apartment. Both youths were tied to opposite sides of Corll's torture board and subsequently raped, strangled, and buried in a boat shed he had rented on November 17th. As an electrical cord with alligator clips attached to each end was buried alongside Yates' body. 6 weeks after the double murder of Glass and Yates, on January 3, 1971, Brooks and Corll encountered two teenage brothers named Donald and Jerry Waldrop. Walking toward their parents' home, the Waldrop brothers had been driven to a friend's home by their father with plans to discuss forming a bowling league, and he had begun walking home after learning their friend was not at home. Both boys were enticed into Corll's van and driven to the apartment. Corll had rented in Magma Road, where they were raped, strangled, and simply buried in both sheds. Between March and May 1971, Corll abducted and killed 3 victims, all of whom lived in Houston Heights area and all of whom were buried toward the rear of a rented boat shed. In each of these abductions, Brooks is known to have been a participant. One of these 3 victims were 15-year-old Randall Harvey, was last seen by his family on the afternoon of March 9th, cycling towards Oak Forest, where he worked past time at a gas station attendant. Harvey was driven to Corll's Memorial apartment, where he was subsequently killed by a single gunshot to his head. The other 2 victims were 13-year-old David Hilgis and 16-year-old Gregory Molly. Winkler were abducted and killed together on the afternoon of May 29, 1971. As he had been the case with the parents of the other victims, Corll boasted a parents' lounge a frantic search of the sons. One of the youths was voluntarily offered to distribute posters to the parents who printed offering a monetary reward for information leading to the youth of the boys' whereabouts. 15-year-old Elmer Wayne Haley, a lifelong friend of Hilgis. The youth penned the reward posters around the heights and attempted to reassure Hilgis' parents that there might be an innocent explanation of the boys' absence. On August 17, 1971, Corll and Brooks encountered a 17-year-old acquaintance of Brooks named Reuben Watson. Haney walking home from movie theater in Houston. Brooks persuaded Haney to attend a party at an address Corll had been to in San Felipe Street the previous month. Haney agreed and was taken off to Corll's home, where he was subsequently strangled and buried in both sheds. In September 1971, Corll moved to another apartment in the Heights area. Brooks later stated he had assisted Corll in the abduction and murder of 2 youths during the time Corll resided at his address, including one youth who was killed just before Wayne came into the picture. In his confession, Brooks stated the youth killed immediately prior to Henley's involvement. The murders were abducted from the Heights and kept alive for approximately 4 days before his murder. The identities of both these victims will remain unknown. In the winter of 1971, Brooks introduced Henley to Corll. Henley likely was lured to Corll's address, was an intended victim. However, Corll eventually decided the youth would make a good complaints and offered him the same fee of $200 for any boy he could lure to his apartment, and informing Henley that he was involved in a white slavery ring operating from Dallas. Henley later stated that for several months he ignored Corll's offer, although he did maintain an acquaintance with Corll and gradually began to view him as something of a brother type person in whom he could confide. In early 1972, he decided to accept Corll's offer because he and his family were in dire financial circumstances. Henley said the first abduction he participated in occurred during the time Corll resided at 1905 Schuyler Street, an address he moved to on February 19, 1972. Brooks later claimed that Henley became involved in an abduction while Corll resided at the address he had occupied immediately prior to Schuyler Street. Henley's statement is to be believed that the victim was abducted from the Heights in February or early March of 1972. In a statement Henley gave to police following his arrest, the youth stated he and Corll picked up a boy at the corner of 11th and Stewart and lured him to Corll's home on the promise of smoking some marijuana with the pair. At Corll residence, using a ruse he and Corll had prepared, Henley cupped his own hands behind his back, freed himself with a key hidden in his back pocket, then stuffed the youth into booning the handcuffs before observing Corll and bind and gag him. Then dumped the youth to doom. Henley then left the youth alone with Corll, believing he was to be sold into a sexual slavery ring. The identity of this first victim Henley assisted in abduction is remains unknown. 1 month later, on March 24, 1972, Henley, Brooks, and Corll encountered an 18-year-old acquaintance of Henley's named Frank Aguirre leaving a restaurant on Yale Street, where the youth worked. Henley called Aguirre over to Corll's van and invited the youth to drink some beer and smoke some marijuana with the trio of Corll's apartment. Aguirre smoked marijuana. I'm sorry I'm saying his name wrong. Aguirre agreed and followed the trio to Corll's home in his Rambler. Inside Corll's home, Aguirre smoked marijuana and the trio began picking up a pair of the handcuffs when Corll had left him on his table. In response, Corll punched Aguirre, punched him into the table, and cuffed his hands behind his back. Henley claimed that he had not known Corll's true intentions towards Aguirre, but he had persuaded his friend to accompany him to Corll's home. In a subsequent interview, he claimed to have attempted to persuade Corll not to insult and kill Aguirre once Corll and Brooks had been bound and gagged the youth. However, Corll refused, informing Henley that he had been raped, tortured, and killed the previous victim he had assisted in abducting, that he intended to do the same with Aguirre. Henley subsequently assisted Corll and Brooks in his burial at Hyde Island Beach. Despite the revelations that Corll was in reality killing the boys he and Brooks had assisted in abducting, Henley nonetheless became an active participant in abductions and murders. A month later, on April 20th, he assisted Corll and Brooks in abducting another 17-year-old named Mark Scott, who was well known to both Henley and Brooks, was grabbed by force and fought furiously against attempts by Corll to restrain him, even attempting to stab his attackers with a knife, as he should, without intending to while getting that I was stabbing with a knife. However, Scott saw Henley pointing a pistol toward him, and according to Brooks, Scott just gave up. Scott was tied to the torture board and suffered the same fate as Aguirre: rape, torture, strangulation, and burial at Hyde Island Beach. Stating Henley was especially sadistic in his participation in the murders committed at Schuyler Street. Before Corll vacated the address on June 26, Henley assisted Corll and Brooks in the abduction and murder of two youths named Billy Balch and Johnny DeLune. In Brooks' confession, he said that both youths were tied to the were tied to Corll's bed, and after torture and rape, Hanley manually strangled Balch, then shouted, "Hey Johnny!" and shot DeLume in the forehead. With the bullet exiting through the youth's ear, DeLume then pleaded with Hanley, "Wayne, please don't," before he was strangled. Both youths were buried at High Island Beach. Now this shit right here is so sad, cause it's like, y'all killing, torturing these boys for what? Like, y'all just planning on torturing, kidnapping, and raping and strangling these boys for what? For their own sexual pleasures? Like, I just not understand that. Every time Corll resided at Squirrel Street, the two lured a 19-year-old named William Riddickner to the house. Riddickner was tied to plywood board, tortured and abused by Corll. Brooks later claimed he persuaded Corll to allow Riddickner to be released, and the youth was allowed to leave the residence. Another occasion during the time Corll resided at Squirrel Street, Henley knocked Brooks unconscious as he entered the house. Corll then tied Brooks to his head and assaulted the youth repeatedly before releasing him. Despite the assault, Brooks continued the assault to Corll and the abductions of the victims. Another vacating the Squirrel Street residence, Corll moved to an apartment at Westcott Westcott Towers, where in summer 1972, he is known to have killed and further two victims. The first of these victims were 17-year-old Stephen Sigmund, who was last seen leaving a party held in the Heights shortly before midnight on July 19th. The youth was savagely bludgeoned about the chest with a blunt instrument before he was strangled and buried in a boat shed. Approximately 1 month later, on about August 21st, 19-year-old named Roy Button was abducted while walking to his job as an assistant in a Houston shoe store. Button was gagged with a section of Turkish towel and his mouth bound with adhesive tape. He was shot twice in the head and buried in both sheds. Neither youth was identified as victims in 2011. Wow, that's crazy. Years later. On October 2nd, 1972, Henley and Brooks encountered two Heights teenagers named Wally J. and Richard Hembry walking to the Hembrys' home. Sam and Hembry were enticed into Brooks' Corvette and driven to Corll's Westcott Towers apartment. That evening, Sam is known to have phoned his mother home and to have shouted the word "Mama" into the receiver before the connection was terminated. The following morning, Henry was accidentally shot in the mouth by Henley, with a bullet exiting through his neck. Several hours later, both youths were strangled. Common grave inside the boat shed directly above the bodies of James Glass and Danny Yates. The following month, an 18-year-old Oak Forest youth known to both Corll and Henley named William Willard Branch disappeared while hitchhiking from Mount Pleasant to Houston. This guy's emasculated body was buried in a boat shed. On November 15th, a 19-year-old Heights youth named Richard Kepner disappeared on his way to a phone booth. Kepner was strangled and buried at Heights Island Beach. Altogether, at least 10 teenagers between ages 13 and 19 were murdered between February and November 1972. First, 5 of whom were buried at High Island Beach, and 5 were in the boat shed. During 1973, Corll moved to an address on Waynes Road in the Spring Branch district of Houston. Within 2 weeks of moving into his address, he had killed 17-year-old Joseph Lils. Lils was known to both Corll and Brooks. He had lived on Intone Drive, the same street upon which Brooks resided in 1973. On March 7th, Corll vacated his rural apartment and moved to 2020 Lamar Drive, an address his father had vacated in Pasadena. In winter of 1971, Brooks introduced Henley to Corll. Henley likely was lured to Corll's address as an intended victim. However, Corll evidently decided the youth would make a good complaints and offered him the same fee of $200 for any boy he could let to his apartment, informing Henley that he was involved in a white slavery ring operating from Dallas. Henley later stated that for several months he ignored Corll's offer, although he did maintain acquaintance with Corll and gradually began to view him as something of a brother-type person. Whereas from June, Corll's rate of killings increased dramatically, and both Henley and Bruce later testified to the increase in the level of brutality of the murders committed while Corll resided at Lamar Drive. Henley later compared the acceleration in the frequency of killings and increase of the brutality exhibited by Corll towards his victims being like a bloodlust. It was announced that he needed to be a new boy. Due to the fact that he would appear restless, smoking cigarettes, and making reflex movements on June 4th by his father, he inquired that the 15-year-old William Ray Lawrence, the youth, was last seen alive by his father on 34th Street. After 3 days of abuse and torture, Lawrence was strangled before being buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. Less than 2 weeks later, 20-year-old Raymond Stanley Byrne was abducted, strangled, and buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. On July 6, 1973, Henley began attending classes at the Coaches Driving School in Bel Air, where he became acquainted with 15-year-old Homer Luis Garcia. The following day, Garcia telephoned his mother to say he would spend the night with a friend. He was shot and left to bleed to death in Corll's bathtub before he was buried at Lake San Rayburn. 5 days later, on July 12th, 17-year-old John Sellers of Orange County was found shot to death and buried at High Island Beach. On July 1973, after Brooks married his pregnant fiancée, Henley temporarily became Corll's sole producer of victims, assisting in the abduction and murder of 3 Heights youths between July 19th and the 25th. Henley claimed that these 3 abductions were the only 3 that occurred after his becoming an accomplice to Corll, in which Brooks was not a participant. One of these 3 victims, 15-year-old Michael, brother of previous victim Billy, was last seen by a seaman on July 19th on his way to get a haircut. He was strangled and buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. The other 2 victims were Charles and Marty Jones, were abducted and together on the afternoon of July 25th. Henley himself later buried both youths' bodies in a boat shed. On August 3, 1973, Corll killed his last victim, 13-year-old boy from South Houston named James Stanton Dre Mahler. Dre Mahler was abducted by Brooks and Corll while riding his bike in Pasadena and driven to Lamar upon the pretense of collecting empty glass bottles to resell. At Corll's home, Dre Mahler was tied to Corll's torture bed, raped, tortured, and strangled by a cord before being buried in the boat shed. Flair described Dre Mahler as a small blonde boy whom he had bought pizza in and whose company he had spent 45 minutes before the youth was attacked. On the evening of August 7, 1973, Henley, aged 17-year-old, invited a 19-year-old named Timothy Cordell Curley. Brooks was not present at the time. The 2 youths arrived at Corll's home, where they sniffed paint fumes and drank alcohol until midnight before leaving the house, promising to return shortly. Henley and Curley then drove back to Houston Heights, and Curley parked his vehicle close to Henley's home. The 2 exited the vehicle, and Henley, hearing commotion across the street emanating from the home of his 15-year-old friend, Wanda Louise Williams, walked toward her home. Williams, nursing a sprained ankle, had been beaten by the drunken father that evening and accepted Henley's invitation to join him and Curley at Corll's home. Williams climbed into the back seat of Curley's Volkswagen. The trio then drove toward Corll's Pasadena residence. At approximately 3 a.m. on the evening of August 8, 1973, Henley and Curley, accompanied by Williams, returned to Corll's residence. Corll was furious that Henley has brought a girl to his house. William had argued with his father. Corll was furious that Henley telling him in private that he had ruined everything. Henley explained that Williams had argued with her father that evening and did not wish to return home. Corll appeared to calm down and offered the trio beer and marijuana. The three teenagers began drinking and smoking marijuana, with Henley and Curly also sniffing paint fumes as Corll watched them intently. After approximately 2 hours, Henley, Curly, and Williams each passed out. Henley awoke to find himself lying on his stomach and Corll snapping handcuffs into his wrists. His mouth had been taped shut and ankles had been bound together. Curly Williams lay beside Henley, securely bound with nylon rope and gagged with adhesive tape and lying face down on the floor, and Curly had been stripped naked. Nothing Henley had woken, Corll removed the gag from his mouth. Henley protested in vain against Corll's actions, whereupon Corll retired that he was angry with Henley for bringing a girl to his house and that he was going to kill three teenagers after he had assaulted and tortured Curly. Initially saying, man, you blew it bringing that girl, before shouting, I'm gonna kill you all. But first, I'm gonna have my fun. He then prettily kicked William in the chest before lifting him to his feet, dragging him into the kitchen, and placing a 22 caliber pistol against his stomach. Threatening to shoot him, Henley called Corll, promising to participate in the torture and murder of both William and Curly if Corll released him. After approximately 30 minutes of discussion, Corll agreed and untied Henley, then carried Curly Williams into his bathroom and tied him into the opposite sides of his torture board. Curly on his stomach, Williams on her back, a hunting knife, and ordered him to cut away Williams' clothes, insisting that while he would rape and kill Curly, Henley would do likewise to Williams. Curly began writing and shouting as Williams, who was gagged, Henley had moved, lifted her head and asked Henley, is this for real? To which Henley answered, yes. Williams then asked Henley, are you going to do anything about it? Henley then asked Corll whether he might take Williams into another room. Corll ignored him and Henley then grabbed Corll's pistol, shouting, you got far enough, Dean, as Corll clambered off Curly. Henley elaborated, I can't go any longer. I can't have you kill all my friends. Corll approached Henley saying, kill me, Wayne. Henley stepped back in a few paces as Corll continued to advance upon him, shouting, you won't do it. Henley then fired at Corll, hitting him in the forehead. The bullet failed to fully penetrate Corll's skull, and he continued to lurch toward Henley, whereupon the youth fired another 2 rounds, hitting Corll in the left shoulder. Corll then ran out the room, hitting the wall out the hallway. Henley fired 3 additional bullets into the lower back and shoulder as Corll slid down the wall in the hallway outside the room, where then 2 teenagers were bound. Died where he fell in his naked body, lying face toward the wall. Henley would later recall that immediately after he shot Corll, the sole thought in his mind was that Corll would have been proud of the way he had behaved during the confrontation, adding that Corll had been training him to react quickly and forcefully, and that this was exactly what he had done. After he had shot Corll, Henley released Curly and Williams from the torture board, and all 3 teenagers dressed and discussed what actions they should take. Henley suggested to Curly and Williams that they should simply leave, to which Curly replied, no, we should call the police. Henley agreed and looked up the number of the Pasadena Police Department, and Corll telephoned the director at 8:24 a.m. on August 8, 1973. Henley placed a call to PPD. His call was answered by an operator named Velma Lyons. In his call, Henley blurted out the operator, y'all better come in here right now. I just killed a man. Haley gave the address to the operator at 2020 Lamar Drive, Pasadena, Texas. As Curly Williams and Haley waited upon Corll's porch when the police arrived, Haley mentioned to Curly that he had done that, killed by shooting 4 or 5 times. Minutes later, a PBD patrol car arrived at 2020 Lamar Drive. The three teenagers were sitting on the porch outside of the house, and the officer noted that 22 caliber pistol on the driveway near the trio. Hanley told the police that he was the individual who had made the call and that Corll's body was inside the house. After confiscating the pistol and placing Henley Williams and Curly inside the patrol car, the officer entered the bungalow and discovered Corll's body inside the hallway. The officer returned to the car and read Hanley his Miranda rights. In response, Hanley shouted, "I don't care who knows about it, I have to get off my chest." Curly later told detectives that before the police officer had arrived at Lamar Drive, Hanley had informed him, "If you wasn't my friend, I could have gotten $200 from you." In police custody, Hanley was initially questioned about the killing of Corll. He shot Corll in self-defense. The statements given by Curly and Williams corroborated Hanley's accounts, and the detective questioning Hanley believed he had indeed acted in self-defense. When questioned regarding his claim that as Corll had threatened him that morning, he had shouted that he had been killed several boys. Hanley explained that for almost 3 years, Brooks had helped he had helped recruit two teenage boys, some of whom had been their own friends from Corll. Hanley gave a verbal statement saying he initially had believed the boys he abducted were to be sold into a Dallas-based organization for homosexual acts, sodomy, maybe later killing, but soon learned Corll was himself killing the victims procured. Hanley admitted that he had assisted Corll in several abductions and murders, and that he had actively participated in torture and mutilation of 6 or 8 victims prior to the murder. Most of the victims had been buried in the southwest Houston boat shed, with others buried at Lake San Rayburn and High Island Beach. Corll had paid up to $200 for each victim Brooks or he were able to lead to his apartment. Police initially were skeptical of Hanley's claims, assuming the sole homicide of the case was that of Corll, but they had described in being the result of drug-fueled fisticuffs that had turned deadly. Hanley was quite persistent, however, upon his recalling the names of 3 boys, Lee, Hilliges, and Jones, whom he said he and Brooks had procured for Corll. Police accepted that there was something to his claims, as all 3 teenagers were listed as missing at Houston Police Department headquarters. Hilliges had been reported missing in the summer 1971. The other 2 boys had been missing just for 2 weeks. Moreover, the floor of the room where 3 teenagers had been tied was covered in a thick plastic sheeting. Police also found a plywood torture board measuring 8 by 3 feet with handcuffs attached to the nylon rope at 2 corners and nylon rope to the other 2. Also found at Corll's address were a large hunting knife, rolls of clear plastic of the same type used to cover the floor, a portable rodeo rig to pair a dry cells to give increased volume, an electric motor with loose wires attached, 8 pairs of handcuffs, a number of dildos, thin glass tubes, and lengths of rope. Corll's Ford inclined van parked in the driveway conveyed a similar impression. The rear windows of the van were sealed by opaque blue curtains in the rear of the vehicle. Police found a coil of rope, a slash of beam rug covered in soil stains, wooden crate with air holes drilled in its sides. The pegboard walls inside the rear of the van were rigged with silver rings and hooks. Another wooden crate with air holes drilled besides were found in Corll's backyard. On the morning of August 8th, Hanley gave a full written statement involvement with Corll in abduction and murder and numerous youths. In his confession, Haley readily admitted to having personally killed approximately 9 youths in DB and that assisted Corll in the strangulation of others. He said that the only 3 abductions and murders Brooks had not assisted him and Corll were committed in the summer of 1973. That afternoon, Henley accompanied police to Lake San Laverne, where he and Brooks Corll had buried 4 victims killed that year. 2 additional bodies were found in the shallow, lime-soaked graves located close to a dirt road inside the lakeside log cabin owned by Corll's family. Police found a second plywood torture board, rolls of plastic shedding, and shovels in a sack of lime. 9 additional bodies in the boat shed on August the 9th. These bodies were recovered between 12:05 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. and all were in an advanced state of decomposition. The 12th body unearthed before evidence of sexual mutilation. Another victim unearthed had several fractured ribs. The 13th and 14th bodies unearthed body identification cards named the victims as Donald and Jerry Waldrop. Brooks gave a full confession evening on August 9th, admitting to being present on several killings and assisting in several burials, although he continued to deny any direct participation in the murders. The torture board upon which Corll had retained and tortured his victims. Brooks stated once they were on the board, they were as good as dead. As it was all over, but shouting and crying, he agreed to accompany police to High Island Beach to assist in the search for the bodies of the victims. On August 10, 1973, Henley again accompanied police to Lake San Bourbon, where 2 more bodies were found buried just 10 feet apart. As with the 2 bodies found the previous day, both victims had been tortured and severely beaten, particularly around the head. That afternoon, both Henley and Brooks accompanied police to Highland Beach, leading to police to the shallow graves of 2 victims. Henley initially insisted that there were 2 more bodies to be found inside the boat shed and that the bodies of 2 more boys had been buried at High Island Beach in 1972. At the time, the killing spree was at the worst case a story murder, and in terms a number of victims in the United States, exceeding 25 murders attributed to Juan Corona, who had been arrested in California in 1971 for killing 25 men. The Macbury record number of known victims attributed to a single case led by Corll and accomplices was surpassed only in 1978 in John Wayne Gacy, which added a case last year, which prior to that video, murdered 30 boys and young men who admitted to being influenced by press coverage of the Houston mass murders to manacle his victims prior to the abuse and murder. Families of Corll's victims were highly critical of the HPD, which had been quick to list missing boys as runaways who had not been considered worthy of any major investigation. By May 1974, Corll's victims had been identified, with all but 4 of the youths having either lived or had close connections to Houston Heights. 2 more teenagers were identified in 1983 and 1985, one of whom, Richard Kepner, also lived in Houston Heights. The other youth, Willer Branch, lived in the Oak Forest district of Houston. On August 13th, a grand jury convened in Harris County to hear evidence against Henley and Brooks. The first witnesses testified were Williams and Curley, who testified to the events of August 7th and 8th and leading to the death of Corll. Another witness who testified to his experience at the hands of Corll was William Riddinger. After listening to over 6 hours of testimony from various people on August 14th, the jury initially indicted Henley on 3 counts of murder and Brooks on 1 count. Bail for each was set at $100,000. The district attorney requested that Henley undergo a psychiatric examination to determine whether he was mentally competent to stand trial, but attorney Charles Melder opposed the decision, stating that the move would violate Henley's constitutional rights. By the time grand jury had completed its investigation, Henley had been indicted for 6 murders and Brooks for 4. Henley was not charged for the death of Corll, which prosecutors ruled on September 18th had been committed in self-defense. Elmer Wayne Henley and David O. Brooks were tried separately for the roles in the murders. Henley was brought to trial in San Antonio on July 1st, 1974, and was charged with 6 murders committed between March 1972 and July 1973. The prosecution called dozens of witnesses, including Corll and Whittinger. Whittinger testified that Corll told he was tied to torture and bored and assaulted repeatedly by Corll before he was released. Other incriminating testimony came from police officers who read from Henley's written statements. In one part of this confession, Henley had described luring 2 of the victims for whose murder had been called to trial. Cobo and Jones, the Corll's Hazelton residents. Henley had confessed that after their initial abuse and torture at Corll and Jones each had one wrist and ankle bound to the side of Corll's torture bed. These were then forced by Corll to fight each other in the promise that the one who beat the other one to death. In the promise that one who beat the other to death would allow to be allowed to live. After they had spent several hours beating each other, Jones was tied to a boat and forced to watch Cobo being assaulted, tortured, and shot to death before he himself was again raped and tortured and strangled with a vanishing black cord. After trial, the state introduced 82 pieces of evidence, including Corll's torture board and one of the boxes used to transport the victims. Inside the box, police had found hair which examiners had concluded came from both Cobo and Henley. Upon advice from his defense counsel, Henley did not take the stand to testify. His attorney cross-examined several witnesses but did not call any witnesses for the defense. After 1974, both counsels presented their closing arguments to the jury. The prosecution seeking life imprisonment, the defense verdict of not guilty. In his closing argument to the jury, District Attorney Corll Bennett apologized for his not being able to seek the death penalty, adding that the case was not the most extreme example of man's inhumanity the man had ever seen. His trial began in June 18, 1979. The second trial was held in Corpus Christi, with Henley again represented by defense attorneys William and Edwin. Henley's attorneys again attempted to have Henley's written statements ruled inadmissible. However, Judge Noah Kennedy ruled the written statements given by Henley on August 8, 1973 as admissible evidence. The retrial lasted 9 days, with Henley's attorneys again calling no defense witnesses and again attacking the credibility of Henley's written confession. The defense also contended the evidence provided by the state belonged to Dean Corll, not Elmer Wayne Henley. On June 27, 1979, the jury deliberated for over 2 hours before reaching the verdict. Henley was again convicted of 6 murders and was sentenced to 6 concurrent 99-year terms. Brooks was brought to trial on February 27, 1975. He had been indicted for 4 murders committed between December 1970 and June 1973, but was only brought to trial and was charged only with the June 1973 murder of 15-year-old William Ray Lawrence and murders attempted to portray Corll into lesser degree. Henley as being the active participants in actual killings. Assistant District Attorney Tommy Doon dismissed defense contention outright and at one point telling the jury this defendant was in on the killing, the murders at Rampage when the very beginning. He tells you he was a cheerleader if nothing else. That's why he was telling about this person, even though he was uninterested. Berg's trial lasted less than 1 week. The jury deliberated just for 90 minutes before they reached a verdict. He was found guilty of Lawrence's murders on March 1, 1975, and sentenced to life imprisonment. Berg showed no emotion as his sentence was passed, although his wife burst into tears. Brooks also appealed his sentence, contending that the signed confessions used against him were taken without his being informed of his legal rights. Brooks also appealed his sentence, contending that the signed confessions used against him without his being informed of legal rights. But his appeal was dismissed in May 1979. Henley is serving his life sentence at Mark Still's unit in Jefferson County, Texas. Successive parole applications dating from July 1980 have been denied. He is next eligible for parole in October 2025. Oh, that's what? 3 years. It will be New Year's. It will be our New Year's in January. So that's what? Almost 2 years from now. That's crazy. Brooks served his life sentence at the Terrell unit near Rushden, Texas. He died of COVID-19 related complications at the Galveston Hospital on May 28, 2020, at the age of 65. That is crazy. So that's crazy. So the two people that participated in Corll's and abduction stuff, they got charged. If Corll was still alive, he would have been charged. That way he would have got the death penalty too. And they two would have got life sentence without parole. And that's crazy. The one is still serving his life sentence, the other one is dead. That's crazy. Race that to all his victims, they died today. I just don't. This case reminds me so much of John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer, because both of them are homosexuals. They both lured their teenage and younger males to their partners so they could have sex with them, or even torture, rape, and kill. But the difference between Jeffrey Dahmer and John Gacy and Dean Corll, is that Jeffrey Dahmer is a monster. He ate his victims. Dean Corll and John Gacy did not eat the victims, okay? Yes, they kidnapped, torture, rape, and buried the victims, but Jeffrey Dahmer, on the hand, he lured his victims. He, like, this is all over the place. And on this case, 2 weeks ago, I'm doing this case in the next video, maybe January, something like that. He killed, raped, tortured, and ate his victims, and kept his victims' bodies in his apartment. That is disgusting, that is insane, that is crazy. So I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer is like the most crazy serial killer of all serial killers out there, especially homosexual serial killers. That is sad. And rest in peace to all the victims who died. They did not deserve that. They were all, in the late teens, early teens, late teens, early 20s. They didn't even deserve that. They just didn't deserve that. If you want to today's video, make sure to comment, subscribe, and make sure you guys comment down below which true crime case you guys want me to cover in the true crime channel. And I'll definitely see you guys in the next true crime case video. Bye!